If you have any questions, please put those in the chat. So today we're going to go over SNO Story Elements. So these are just different things that you can add into your story. So if you have a story like this one here, my sample story this morning, that has a nice featured image at the top, but then as we scroll down, it's a really long story that as we scroll here is just a big block of text. SNO Story Elements are a great way that you can break up that story. So from your story editor, here's the back end where you can edit that story. We've placed that featured image there in the featured image area, and we're doing another webinar about basic story creation later this week. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely sign up for that one. But for this one, we're going to focus on these two buttons here. There's the SNO Story element, which I'll talk about all those, but then we also have the option to add inline photos. So maybe you have one image that's your featured image, and that's going to be the one you put up at the top. But you've got some other images that, maybe aren't as good, but will still help contribute to telling the story. And most importantly, can be used to break up text on a super long story like this one. So whether you're adding an inline photo or a SNO Story element, you do want to make sure to kind of navigate your cursor in the story editor here to wherever you would like that element to go within the story. And then, this is really important, make sure to create a new line. Whether you're adding an inline photo or a SNO Story element, you do want to place those things on their own line. Otherwise, it throws off the formatting of the text. So, of the particular paragraph where you're trying to add it. So again, just make sure those things are on their own line. So quick overview of how to add a secondary or an inline photo. Just click that button. And then it's the same process as uploading your featured image. You can either select a pre-existing image from your media library, which is every image that you've ever uploaded to your site, or you can click that Upload Files tab and then navigate to wherever that photo is on your computer. Once you select that and upload it, you can add the caption here and add the photographer's name. That photographer field is going to create a clickable byline that the reader can click to take them to that photographer's staff profile where they'll see all of that work. So then I just insert that into the story and it'll drop it in here. You can tell just by looking at this one, even on the dashboard or the story editor view, this is a really large photo. It's probably going to look out of place and maybe even conflict with how big that featured image is displaying. If you're looking for something a little more traditional in terms of a secondary photo that's maybe a little smaller, once I've placed that story in there, I can click it and grab the corner, shrink it down. That number that appears there is the size of the photo. So maybe make it a little bit smaller, like 300 pixels wide there. And then you have the option up here to align the element. So alignment is kind of a couple things to note about alignment as it applies to both these photos and the SNO Story elements. If I align any of these elements in the center, then the text is going to jump over that element. So if it's smaller like this, it will create some white space on either side. Some people like that look. Others prefer, if it's a smaller element, to instead align it to the left or the right where the text is going to wrap around it. So just really quick, we'll update our preview here and see that we now have that secondary photo placed in roughly where we wanted it to go, aligned on the left. So that's how you can add in those secondary photos. If you've got a lot of photos and you want to just drop those throughout, that's certainly an option. But beyond secondary images, we also offer SNO Story elements. So these are different things that you can drop into the story to break up the text and enhance your coverage. So I'm just going to go in order. Some of you may see more options when you click into this button if you have subscribed to our Site Booster. Site Booster is just an extra set of tools so you can create things like quizzes, tests, infographics on the back end of your site and then drop those into the story. So you may see more options than this. For this particular webinar, I just wanted to focus on the elements that are available to everybody. So we'll just go from the top to the bottom. Related stories here. This is a great way to link back to previous coverage. So if I'm following a developing story and want to easily link back to my previous coverage of that topic, related stories is a great way to do that. You can easily link back to up to 4 previously published stories. So we select the related stories element, and in the content column, we can give it a title here. So I'll call this other basketball stories, for example. And then you just search for the stories you want to drop in there based on words in the headline. So on my sample site, I have a lot of stories that have the word headline in there. So I'm just going to type that in here. As you can see, it will populate with any stories containing that word. And then I can easily select, again, up to 4 of those and drop them in. And I can rearrange the order that they're going to load it by dragging and dropping. Then in the design column, I've got some control over here. Again, if I drop these in the center, the text will jump over that element. Left or right, it'll kind of wrap around it. And then I can do things like adjust my border, change the border color, adjust the background color. So not a ton in there, but enough that you can tweak the design and make it stand out if you choose to do so. We'll go ahead and just make this a skinny black border here around these stories, and I'll insert that in there. So when you insert these elements into your story, you'll see them as a line of short code on the story editor, but that is what we expect to see. So now we're good to go. So again, I will update my preview here. Still have that secondary image. And as I scroll down, here's my related stories. So as you can see, it pulls in the thumbnail image of whatever featured image is tied to the story that you're putting in there and displays the headline. And if I click on that, it will open that story and you're good to go. So again, linking back to previous coverage, related stories, a great way to do that. If you have multiple secondary images and you don't want to place them one at a time, you do have the option here with this gallery SNO Story element to instead place multiple secondary images as a photo gallery. So to do that, same process as adding that inline photo. I can either do it uploading a new image or select images here from the library. So I'll just add a few in here just so you can see what that element looks like. And then we insert that in there. So this is one of the few SNO Story elements where when you add it in, you don't see the short code, but instead you see the caption and the thumbnail here of the photos you've added into that gallery. But what that gallery looks like for your reader is something like this, where your reader can see it as a gallery by virtue of this button here. And if they click that, it opens in this overlay window. Here's what our caption and bylines look like over here. And then we get that nice big display of the photo and they can click through. So that's how you can add a photo gallery if you have a lot of secondary images. You can edit that, add to the gallery, drag and drop to rearrange the order those are going to appear, or remove photos. We'll go ahead and remove that, but that's how you can place a photo gallery. And I've seen some people with that photo gallery place multiple galleries throughout. You know, maybe over the summer there were multiple construction projects at school, so you have photo galleries highlighting those different areas, and like 3 or 4 photos for each area, so multiple photo galleries. That is possible using that SNO Story element. All right, moving on. Pull quote. This one's pretty straightforward, just a pull quote that you want to highlight a quote here. So this can be longer, shorter. With So content-wise, it's just the speaker and the quote, and then we get into some design options here. If it's a shorter quote, you may want to increase the font size. And then if you have a photo of the speaker, you can add that in to the pull quote. So we'll see if that worked or not. Like maybe it's not liking that. Maybe I have to go here and just upload the new one. We'll try that. We'll see if that one works out or not. So if we place it in the center, again, that's going to jump over my text, and we'll just keep all of my default design options for right now. And yeah, for whatever reason, it's not pulling in the photo right now. This is my secondary demo site, so might be something to do with that. I'll have to look into that later. I do apologize. That's not functioning as intended, but here's that pull quote. And again, if it's in the center, it's going to take up the full column width, be a nice way to break that up. And I know this is working on my other demo site. So if you have a photo, that photo will appear above the speaker's name there in kind of the upper right corner. So pull quote, great way to break up the text, highlight an interesting quote, same way that we would do in print. All right. So then jump down here to the info box. We are going to have a separate webinar about the info boxes, but those need to be created on the dashboard of your site first. So I'm not going to go through the full process there, but you go to the info boxes tab and click add info box, build it out there. And then once it is built out, you will see it available to drop into your story via this drop down button. So any info boxes that have been published will be available here, and then we just drop it in. This one, the short code is pretty short because all of your design work is going to be contained in the info box that you've published here. And those info boxes, if you've not used them yet, are pretty cool design-wise. They can be set up in 3 different formats. This one's using the accordion format. So people, based on the segment title, can just click on what interests them, and then they'll see a photo that you've added there if the segment has a photo, and then text. So last year I saw a really cool one near the beginning of the year. Somebody did like a club fair info box. So they had, I think, 20 or 30 different segments, and it was set up in the accordion style like this. So your reader can just click into the club that interests them, open it up, and read about that. So those info boxes take a little bit of extra work here because you have to build them on the dashboard in the info boxes tab. But once they're built, they can be dropped anywhere into a story. All right, so then our next story element is the story collection. And this is similar to related stories. However, with related stories, those images are kind of small and you're limited to only 4 stories that you can link back to. With the story collection, you can link back to up to 50 previously published stories. So this would be a great way, end of a sports season, to link back to all your game coverage and features on that team from the season. So you can give it whatever title you want here, and then add a description. And we'll do the full collection there. And then similar to that related stories, just search for the headline. But this time, again, you can link back to up to 50 stories. You can arrange the order here by dragging and dropping. And we'll increase the width there and insert. And then what that looks like is kind of this grid style. So with this one here, looking at it, I'd probably want to have at least 6 stories to eliminate that white space there, or maybe play with my width a little bit. But if you've got a featured image on that story, it'll display just the image. And then if I hover over that image, I'll see the headline. And if I click that, it's going to take me back to that previously published story. So several different ways that you could certainly utilize that, linking back to previously published stories if you're doing developing news coverage, or if you wanted to, you know, do some sort of like athlete of the week or anything where you would want to, kind of create a grid layout, that story collection can certainly allow you to do that. Couple more here. Yes, so those of you who arrived late, we are recording this and it's going to be available on the SNO webinars support article. So you can go to support.snosites.com, search for webinars, and you'll have links to the recordings there. All right, the text box. This is just kind of a traditional sidebar. So if I'm writing about a school board policy, maybe I don't want to have the full policy in the text of my story, but I still want to let people read it. So we will build this out just a little bit. There we go. You can adjust the width for this column to be kind of wider or narrower. And then again, align it on the left or the right, and then we can insert it in there. Again, we get that line of short code, but then if I preview that, there it is. So kind of a nice way to offset that extra information that maybe doesn't fit in the narrative of the story that your reporter has written, but is still going to be helpful to your reader. So text box, great way to do that. A video embed. So this works for audio or video. So if I'm writing a movie review and I want to drop in the trailer, I just need to go find that trailer on YouTube. And then on YouTube, in the share options, there's the embed code. And that's what I'm going to get. So in YouTube, it's in the share area. If you're trying to paste something from Spotify, you'll find that embed option in the more options there. So just kind of click around on whatever service you're looking to embed media from. Usually it's either in share or more. But once I get that embed code, I can paste it in here, give credit to whoever that video is from, and then drop it in there. And then this is what the embed will look like on the story editor. And then on the story page itself, it'll look like this. Just had a question sent directly to me in the chat. That's definitely a good one that I want to make note of. The story elements are available to anybody who's able to draft or post on the site. So if you have contributor level users who aren't able to publish anything, they're still going to be able to create these story elements when they're drafting the stories. So it's available to everybody. It doesn't have to be an administrator level user. All right, so then that's the video. Then we've got a generic embed. This would be if let me see. If I wanted to place like a social media post, or if I created an infographic or a timeline, something like Genial or something, I can open up Instagram to that post, and Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, TikTok, they all have this option. In the more options here, you'll see the option to embed, and that'll allow you to copy the code. And then we can just paste that code in here. You can credit it to the account you took it from, and then it will drop that particular post in there. And there you go. So that's the generic embed option. All right, just two more here. There's a poll. So similar to the info box, to create a poll, you first need to go to the SNO polls tab and add a new poll, set all of your options there. And once you've done that, then it'll be available here in the drop down. You can adjust your design settings if you would like to do that, but then place it wherever you want it to go in the story. And there's our poll. This one, the one I selected, I had an end date set. We've passed that, so we can't actually participate in it. But you can, as this one demonstrates, have images associated with each response. You can also have a featured image associated with the question. So you can set these polls up to be really visual. One thing a word of caution with the polls, if you add the images, is that can sometimes create a lot of height to the poll. So you do want to make sure you've got a lot of room to work with, or make sure to run those polls at the bottom of the story to avoid creating kind of some excess white space. And then our last story element here is just a countdown element. So, I think most people have kicked off their football season for the year. So at this point, we're starting to probably think about homecoming. And I know some schools have homecoming really early. So you can set, the time of the homecoming dance and have a message saying what this is counting down to, and then a message that will display once that time has run out. There's a light and a dark theme. There's not a whole lot you can do design wise with this one, but then we add that in. It will be counting down, and you can have it count down by the seconds. So if you're writing about changes to graduation, maybe this spring, you could throw in a countdown to graduation there. So that's certainly an option as well. So these are the story elements that are available just in the everybody should have these available on their site. Again, some of you may see a few more options in there if you have our site booster added onto your account, but these are a great way to break up those long stories and in some cases enhance the coverage, add additional information for your readers. So just make sure that you're placing any elements on their own line, including those inline photos. And then you can always see what they look like using that preview function. And when you think it is good to go, either publish, or again, if you're a contributor level user, you'll see a button there that says submit for approval. So that is how you can utilize those SNO Story elements. If anybody has any additional questions, please drop those in the chat. But that is all I have for today's webinar. Hope to see you at future webinars. Again, I will update the webinars support article with the new link as soon as that's available. So yeah, any additional questions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for joining me and have a great start to your September, great 24-25 school year.